And I'm going to share with you guys some more in-depth strategy and some more of my thoughts that I usually don't share because I don't think they're particularly nice. So hopefully you don't find what I say too mean, but let's get into it. I told myself that since it's a public game, fuck these guys. So hand number one, I have ace, queen of diamonds.
3 to go, yes.
I make it $25 pre-flop. The small blind calls, Derek calls, and a new guy calls, who I forgot his name. Pot is $100. Flop is queen high, queen six deuce with two clubs. I bet half pot. That's $50. And Derek calls, and the new guy calls. Now the pot is $250. The turn is a jack of heart, so there are two flush draws. I have top pair, top kicker. Before it gets to me, the new guy puts the rest of his stack $100. And I have a decision here. Should I call to let Derek in, or should I go all in to get Derek out? Well, since I have a good hand, I want Derek to stay in.
Raise all in.
However, I make an assumption that Derek will pretty much call either way because my stack, I mean his stack is about $275. So I go all in, and Derek takes a while before he realizes that he's not getting the correct odds to call with a flush draw, and he folds. We run it twice. We see that the clubs hit on the second board. Derek says he folded the clubs. And I think to myself, dude, fucking call with a flush draw, man. Like, think about where you're at.
You're not living life properly.
And I get tilted. But Derek, he makes up for it by drinking a lot.
Oh, yeah. That's flash, too.
A hard drop, too.
I missed my drop.
Yeah, straight.
No, I had the club draw.
Clubs.
Darn you.
Chips in the gold room. Chips in the gold room.
Your clubs too?
I thought you would call with a club, though.
No, I didn't have, my stack's not big enough.
Big blind? No. Oh, I'm looking at the
Yeah.
Or wait, or my stack was, if it was smaller, yeah.
fucking weird.
No, it's just not.
On there.
In this next hand, I'm in the big blind with Jack 10 offsuit. Matt raises it, and the new guy calls. I call too. Three ways to the flop. 10 high. 10, 8, 6 with two clubs. So there's a flush draw. We both check to the razor, and Matt bets $30. The new guy calls. I have top pair here. I could be ahead, I could be behind, but I think a lot of the times I'm mostly ahead, and I want to raise now because my top pair is vulnerable to like the overcards, right? If Matt is bluffing with like ace queen or king queen or queen jack or whatever, you know, he could hit a queen or higher to outdraw me. So I just had to raise, maybe some flush draws call, maybe some hands like 7-8, 7-6 call, and Matt, I mean, it's live poker, right? So I feel like a lot of you guys don't raise these spots because I actually don't know the reason why, but it's live poker, right? As soon as you raise, look at your fucking opponent, and usually they will give away if they like that you raised or if they don't like that you raised. So I don't know if that helps anyone, but you know, I raised, and I saw Matt was going to fold before he folded because it's live poker, and the new guy puts the rest of his money in. He's short stack. We run it twice, and I hold. The session's going good so far. I'm actually winning up and down a little, but slightly winning. And Jay, Big J, makes it $35, and a bunch of people call. and I'm in the straddle, and I look down at pocket kings. So I'm going to raise this one up. I'm going to make it, and I told you guys I was going to talk strategy, so here you go. Some quick math. His bet was 35. I'm out of position. I'm going to multiply it by 4, and then I'm just going to add another multiple of 35 for every person that called. And that's roughly like, I don't know, I make it $235. Only Big J calls. And he says that he needs a board with cards bigger than a 5 and lower than a 10. And I believe him. So, as Bad Beat Brian is putting out the flop, I'm thinking to myself, please do not put out any cards between a 5 and a 10. I don't know. I really don't want to see these cards. The flop is 6, 9,
300.
Queen. I check, and he bets $300. I laugh because, I know the situation. He wanted this flop. If he has it, he has it. I go all in. He quickly calls. He's a run it once guy, so we need to hit on this board, but we don't improve. So I have to rebuy. In this next hand, I'm in the big blind with ace queen. MCA makes it $20. I 3-bet him to 120. And before I even look up, Big J already has his chips in the middle. This guy calls so fast, and the chips are like deep in the middle of the table. MCA folds. Before I even see the flop, I already know that I'm going to c-bet. Big J is calling with a wide range of hands, which means that he's going to miss the flop more often than not. My hand's pretty good anyway. Big J calls, and the turn is an ace. So I have top pair, which means I very likely have the best hand. And I bet again, and Big J folds because he knows I have an ace. This is actually different than how I would play it versus other players who are tighter, right? Other players, when they limp and then they call the 3-bet, it's a big 3-bet to 120. They usually at least have a pocket pair or a hand better than ace queen, which is ace king. And in those cases, I'm going to check or at least look at the board before I decide what to do. If I check, those players also tend to not be as aggressive. So they'll underbluff the flop, and I'll get a good read and be able to navigate. Anyway, this next hand, I have 9-8 of spades on the button, and somebody raises to 20. I call. Sane Shane in the small blind, not Insane Shane, but Sane Shane, makes it 120. I have a hand that, helps me with board coverage, which means when I call and the flop is middle cards or whatever, I could represent that. So I call, and we see a flop. I'm hoping I don't see any big cards. Fortunately, oh no, Elena puts out 7-4-3 rainbow, but none of those suits are spades. Shane checks. I check it back, see what happens on the turn. The turn is a 5 of hearts. So now the board is pretty low and connected. Shane checks again. And this is just an obvious bluff spot for me. I could hit a 9, an 8, or a 7. Anyway, he snap folds. This next hand, I have pocket deuces in position on the button, and Derek makes it 20. I call. Big J calls, and Matt calls. The flop is king, queen, 8 with 2 clubs, so we do not hit a set. However, it checks to us, and we decide to check it back. The turn is a 2 of clubs. We hit a set. Before I even realized I hit a set, Big J already bet $40. Matt 3-bet him to 120. Derek gets out the way. And when he gets to me, I feel like Matt has semi-bluff energy, and Big J also would probably not bet 40 with a flush. I think he'd bet bigger. So I think that I might actually have the best hand. And if I don't, I could boat up on the river. I decide to call, and and Big J folds. Ace of clubs, so there's 4 clubs out there. My set is no longer any good to a club. Matt checks. So I asked myself if I think I could get him to fold a small flush, but I think I was just so locked in watching this back, and this hand was played a month ago. I go all in because I know he probably has a small flush, and I want to get him to fold. So I say as I go all in, you should fold. And he folds. So, yeah. Played well? I don't know. But did I win? Yes. This next hand, I have King 7 of Hearts in late position. I raise it up to $15. Matt calls. Derek puts in the 3-bet to 55. And honestly, I think he's fucking around. He's just not giving off that energy that he has a real hand. And Brittany calls, and I decide to call. I'm in position. I'm suited. And we're 3 ways to a flop. Jack 6-9 with a flush draw out there. Derek checks. So, in my mind, because there's a flush draw out there, I think that I can discount the overpairs. I think he might be capped at a jack at best, but he probably bets a jack. So I don't think Derek has much. I'm going with my pre-flop read. And Brittany didn't bet, so I also think she's capped at the best hand is a jack. So I bet 75. Derek calls, and they both call. So the turn is an offsuit 7. I still have a flush draw. They check to me again. I think that they might have called me on the flop with a hand that's better than a 7. So here's the thing about bluffing, right? You consider your fold equity, how often you can get your opponents to fold. Whether that's 10% of the time, 20% of the time, or, I don't know, 50% of the time. Then you consider your hand's equity. With my hand, right, if I get called and I'm behind, I can improve with a heart, a 7, or a king. Well, I don't know the exact equity I have with my hand, but my hand has, a good chance to win. And if I add the percentage of times that my opponents fold, this could be a winning play if I go all in. So I go all in. What you also need to consider is your opponent's stack size. Brittany does not have a big stack, so it's a little bit harder for her to let go of her hand, which is a jack. So she ends up calling. We run it twice, and we chop. This next hand, I'm in the big blind with 10-8 offsuit. Big J raises it up to 35 pre-flop. MCA calls, and I call because,
That part.
I'm pissed off. MCA had bluffed me in an earlier spot with some speech play.
That's it from me, guys.
I'm competitively pissed off. I'm not actually pissed. I'm playing with some fire, all right? 3 ways to a flop. 10-8 5. I flop top 2 pair. MCA checks. I check. Big J checks. The turn is a 2 of spades, which brings in a flush draw. MCA bets 50, 55. Can't remember. I raise here with my 2 pair to 200. And MCA calls. The river is 4 of clubs. I've bluffed this type of spot many times and gotten called by a 5, by a 2, by pocket 3s. I've done it so often. I'm finally going to do it with a 10-8 offsuit. I think it doesn't matter how much I bet. He's not going to use my bet size to influence his decision to call or not. So because of that, I'm going to kind of have value. I'm just going to go for everything and get paid, hopefully. And I do. So now this hand turns my session into a winning session. And I'm going to end it here. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment below, like, and I'll get back out there and play again soon.